Sorry, it's Councillor Jackson here. I was on mute as well. Sorry.
Thank you, Sharon. We have all members present apart from Councillor Chris McElhenny and Councillor Innes Nelson. Every other councillor is present. Thank you.
Right. So I don't know if they can hear me. Sharon, would you wave gently if you can hear me? Okay, that's reassuring. Right. Thank you.
Can I just check if there are any declarations of interest, please, Provost? None. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sharon.
Thank you.
There are 2 items on today's agenda, so it's possible that we might leave here while we're all still young. We'll see. The item 2 is the 2019 to 2020 audit report to elected members and the controller. It's a statutory requirement that we consider this. Officers and auditors have been working on this for some time against the background of COVID. If we agree the recommendations, then the accounts and the letter of representation can be signed. But today there will be no need to stop to sign, as this will be done electronically. There are 5 sections to the report, and it contains a mass of information on our financial metrics. Alan, do you wish to speak on this?
Thank you, Provost. Just briefly, and good afternoon, everyone. The purpose of this report is really for Audit Scotland to present the annual audit report and for members to seek from them reassurance and ask any questions. If approved, as you have quite rightly said, Provost, the accounts and the letter of representation will be signed by the council leader, the chief executive and myself, and submitted to Audit Scotland for their signature. The final thing I would just like to say is to thank my accountancy team, the other services and officers such as Andy Priestman, who's been involved, and also the efforts of the Audit Scotland team in getting the accounts to this stage in these unprecedented times. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Alan. Under Gerard's advisement, if he gives it, I would now invite the auditors to speak to the report.
Thank you, Provost. I shall continue Alan's sentiments there, as we would very much like to thank council staff for the support for the audit process. This is a very kind of unprecedented year for us, and the audit has been conducted remotely from the council. I would say overall it's a very positive report. Our audit opinions are all clear. We have in our audit certificate drawn attention to one matter, which is in note 37 of the accounts, which is around this year because of COVID-19, we have greater uncertainty over asset valuations. That's pretty consistent across the board in Scottish councils, because valuations do depend on things like rebuild costs and building costs, which at the moment are pretty uncertain. And in your own assessment later in this report, we touch on it. You're estimating almost 50% increase in the current slippage this year in the current capital programme. We, as I say, we do in paragraph 37 of our report note this slippage on capital plans, and the only other thing really to note is that we have identified again the high level reserves at paragraph 34, the 4th largest for its size of this council across Scotland. But we do note that that could be all part of your COVID response plans. Obviously, you're still awaiting Scottish Government funding confirmation on big elements of the financial plan, and actually having a decent size of reserve. This is probably the year, if any, that I would hope that councils would have that to depend on. So, Provost, I haven't anything else to say. Very happy to take questions if that's required.
Thank you, Brian. As Brian said, he's very happy to take questions. Does any member have a question for Brian and the audit team?
Can I comment, Provost?
Yes, certainly.
Yeah, unfortunately, I was just thrown out there, Provost, but I rushed back in again to the meeting. I very much welcome the report. I think on the whole, again, it's a very positive report, which highlights our ongoing high standard of financial management. I think we've got a good track record around that. There are obviously a number of recommendations in the report, and our role obviously as elected members, in particular the audit committee, will obviously to oversee and ensure that those recommendations are implemented. Like Alan, I'd like to thank Brian and his team for the professional way in which they've conducted the audit in these very strange times, and it's good that we're here, albeit a month later than we would normally be, but here approving the annual accounts. And I would like to thank Alan and his team as well, and all other officers who have contributed to the preparation of the accounts and their heroic efforts. And again, these extraordinary times we're living in. Just before I was thrown out, I caught Brian mentioning the high level of reserves that we've got, and obviously that's been an issue which has been highlighted before, and obviously we would argue the vast majority of the reserves we've got have been earmarked for particular purposes that we view would help improve the lives of people in our community. But I think it's fair to say that, and I'm sure I speak for all elected members, we're very glad we've got those high level of reserves at this particular point in time. Maybe Alan Puckrin's been looking in a crystal ball for the past decade or so. We are in a relatively, and I say relatively, fortunate position to have such a significant level of reserves, which gives us potential options in how we manage both the sort of short-term impact of the pandemic, but potentially the medium and longer-term impact as well. I don't have any specific questions, Provost, but as I say, I'm certainly glad that we once again are getting a very positive report, and I certainly would recommend to the council that we accept the report, the recommendations contained, and approve the annual accounts for signing.
Thank you very much, Stephen, for your commentary there. In sequence, we have a question from Jim McElhaney, and then from Elizabeth.
Thanks, Provost. Thanks, Provost. A point of clarification on the accuracy of the report, if I could. Page 21 of our council papers, part 3 of the report, talks about the council has good financial plans and will present a 2-year budget next year with an initial funding gap of 10.7 million over the 2 years. Can I ask as to what committee was the 2-year budget approved at?
Is that a question for Brian or for Alan, Jim?
It'll probably be for Alan.
Alan, can you answer that?
Yes, happy to, through you, Provost. The council at its last policy and strategy committee, policy and resources committee, approved the 2-year strategy, or reaffirmed the 2-year strategy of going for a 2021-23 budget, and the 10.7 million figure was reported to the policy and resources executive subcommittee in June or July. It was by the time it went to the executive subcommittee over the summer.
Good. Happy, Jim?
Just sorry, Provost, to come back on that. We're clear it's a strategy and not the budget, because the wording is it doesn't mention the strategy, it mentions that we're agreeing a 2-year budget.
Sorry, Provost, I didn't make myself clear. The strategy is to approve a 2-year budget, if that's clear.
Okay, Jim, are you quite happy with that? Elizabeth, you're on mute.
Thank you.
Once is enough.
Just to comment. It's again a comment rather than a question. I also think this is a very positive report, and we really should welcome it. Just looking at part 1, the first page of part 1 in the report, it says that the purpose of this is to look at our stewardship of resources and their performance. And coming from the education background that I come from, I'm going to do a kind of 2 stars and a wish on that, and say that getting a report card that says we have been good stewards of our resources is a star. Looking at the performance that we have in terms of the external validation and the self-evaluation and external evaluations that we have of how we perform as an organisation is another star. The wish that I have is that that continues to translate into the impact that we need for the community. I think it's very good if we're a well-governed organisation. It's important that we're a well-governed organisation. It's important that we deliver services that are performing well. But I think the thing that we need to continue to strive for and to work hard for is to translate that into impact in our community. I completely agree with Councillor McCabe in terms of our reserves position, the fact that we have been able to get a balance in terms of what we have in reserves and being able to do what we need to do with them. And again, I would just put on record an urge to us all to be able to maintain that balance and work together to be able to do that into the future, not just for this particular point in history that we find ourselves in. Thank you, Provost.
No, thank you very much, Elizabeth, for that commentary too. I don't see any further questions. Is there? No?
Yeah,
Councillor Rebecca. Councillor Rebecca, you're on mute. Can't hear you.
You'll hear me now. You hear me?
I hear you, loud and clear.
Good. Just a comment, and I'm glad that Elizabeth, the same as I've said for donkeys, and I'm glad Stevens, we had people that wanted to spend a penny, and thank heaven we didn't know what was around the corner, and we've been through that before. And all I can say is Alan Pucker and his teams always said, there's not many men I trust with my money, I'd rather trust my life. But Alan have repeatedly, Andy and their team been fabulous. Procurement's been great, and what a difference in it. And I'll take that, and then I'll go back and say how we've done well with the delayed discharges. But the other thing we don't seem to kick up about is how good we're doing at trying to keep prices down for our sports, and also how good we are as an employer. Now, we were the top employer in Scotland out of 32 councils for working with staff. That's what we should be singing the praises of. As I said, personally, I would like to thank also Brian and his team. But I mean, seriously, we don't kick up, say, hey, we're not all bad in Inverclyde. Every paper knocks us down. And yet you could go through this report and I'll tell you what, even the kids at school are doing better than where they are elsewhere. Surely God, we should be hitting them back and saying, this is how good Inverclyde is. Seriously. That's what Provost, that's my views on it.
Thanks very much. Thank you, Luciano, for that, for those comments, and I'm sure everyone would endorse them.
What's your name? Just call me Channel. Well, Channel's the guy that sings.
That's fine, Luciano. Sorry, Channel. We have two members who are telephoning. I'll go to Councillor MacLeod.
Yeah, thank you, Provost. I'd just like to, Councillor McCabe and Councillor Robertson have said, I'd just like to congratulate again on a good report. Thanks to Brian and his team for for obviously arriving at the decisions and the comments that have made, and also thanks again to Alan Puckrin and his team for serving the council so well. Good advice over the years. Sorry, there's a bit of feedback there. I don't know what's happening. Can you hear me all right?
No, not really. Not really, Jim. There's a lot of echo. Chan, who is it? He's mute. Try again, Jim. We heard most of it. Yes, we heard most
Right.
the first part of it until quite recently we heard, and we heard your endorsement of the officers.
Absolutely. So that's that. It's just a question, and it's for Alan. You know, some years ago we were told that, you know, we like to keep obviously common good at £100,000, a minimum of £100,000. We know that a few years back we had to use money from the common good, and that level went down quite dramatically for a while. Glad to see it's going back up again. But for Alan, when will we see its return to the £100,000 plus?
Alan.
Thank you, Provost. The latest projection that's going to Policy and Resources Committee indicates that we'll be up in the high 90,000s by the 31st of March 2021. That's been aided, that sort of quite swift recovery has been aided by two things. One is a capital receipt that was approved by the Regeneration Committee in relation to the sale of a common good asset. And the other is, sadly, we've had to cancel a few events this year that are funded from the Common Good Fund. So that's a one-off financial boost that's come from COVID, is that these events have been cancelled. So that's saved the Common Good some money. So I'd be hopeful that by this time next year, we're sitting with a balance of over the £100,000.
You quite happy with that, Jim?
Well, I'm glad to see that's happening, because obviously there was, you know, it'd been a lot less than that for a good number of years there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jim. Colin?
Hi, Martin. Yeah, Martin, just to thank Alan and his team, just take what everybody else says. Thanks, Martin.
Okay, thank you very much, Colin. Well, I don't see any, are there any, no, I don't see any further questions. Can we agree the recommendations?
Provost, the recommendations are agreed unanimously by the Council. That's recommendations as noted in pages 1 and 2 of the report papers.
Thank you very much, Gerard. We now come to item. Anyone dead? No.